Hey everybody, welcome back to another Krita tutorial. We are going to continue with our gimmick series and move on to the next two options. So we're going to go to Filter, Start Gimmick. So we're going to start with contours, which is like the lines and the shape of the overall drawing you have. I'm using color again in the sample, I guess you would call it, image to use with these, because I think that a lot of these options are going to have the best results with that. So we go to Convolve. You can see there's basically the outline. It has almost like a 3D effect. It has a thin shadow, kind of like an embossment. So if I were to take this and theoretically emboss it on something, this is what would probably show up. I'm hoping you can see this. There's a very subtle outline here with a shadow on the outside of the lines. It's pretty neat. So we can go here and change the settings. Ooh, that makes it a much darker outline here. So if you're doing some 3D work, maybe that looks very interesting. it's like almost blurred. Maybe you're doing like some 3D work and you want to imprint this, I guess you would call it, on your 3D whatever object. You could probably do that. I actually want to try that. I'll have to keep that in mind. All right, so we're gonna move on to curvature. So it's kind of like the curve of the line is being affected by the contour here. So you can see this area has a lot of curves, so it's kind of standing out more with this interesting colored effect. So let's change the smoothness. It kind of blurs it. Let's move that down. This gives us a much more finer detail. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Oops. There we go. It has a nice outline around the eyes. So it looks like the more curve there is, the darker it's going to be. Very interesting. Difference of Gaussian, just blurs. So this I thought was pretty cool. It's like a spooky type look, but it also reminded me of like a neon sign. Like if you wanted to make some neon signs, and you're like, you know, I have some artwork, I can just pop this in there, put a neon sign in the background of my image, and it's already blurred, so it's like a background element. I thought that would be kind of neat. Distance transform. This is just some weird psychedelic stuff. We have edge, so it's just looking at the edge of your artwork. So everything here is the brightest, which I thought was neat. And everything in the inside is gray, which I actually, let me see if I can zoom out here. 50%. I thought this looked really cool. It really made this pop more in terms of like how it handled the outlines and everything. So we can change it here. Let's see. Let's do standard. See if I get a different effect. Doesn't seem to want to work with that. Now, as a note, I do have a solid white background on this layer with the image, and that might be affecting some things. I tried these originally without the white background, but some of the contour options show up best with the white background in that layer. So this is pretty neat. It changes the overall element of the lines. I'm gonna put that back down. I still like that default setting though, it looks really nice. So edges, it's just working on your edges here. It has a really neat faded look to it. We have edges offset. This is some crazy stuff as well. Okay, so extract foreground is taking a while to process. So basically it's supposed to be extracting the background from the foreground. So what it does when you start using it, so as the instructions say, you can hit apply or OK, and it gives you a new screen here and these control dots. So these dots are gonna, from what I'm understanding, will dictate where your background is to separate. And when you click, you can add new dots. So this is taking a while to process. So I'm not gonna finish it, and the background's white, so there's not much to separate. But I think I'll add this to a more advanced gimmick tutorial at the end of the series, kind of like I did with the colorization options in another video, because I need to get a better image to test or not, well, yeah, test out with this, like an actual photograph maybe. And if I have time, I can actually wait as long as it needs to process and show you what that does. So I'm just going to close out of that and hit cancel. All right, next is the gradient norm. So this gives an interesting gradient here to the contour and the shape. I'm not sure if it's because I have some color blended here. It seems to be the case. Maybe it's where two different colors meet that it's focusing on that, which I found interesting. Gradient RGB. You can get some really cool psychedelic line art. Kind of reminds me of, oh shoot, what is it called? That black paper, and then you scratch off of it with like a pen or something, and it gives you that outline rainbow color underneath. I don't remember what it's called, but that's what that reminds me of. Isophotes, I don't know if I'm saying that right. This looks like it just takes all the lines and gives it an equal thickness. Maybe not. Yeah, it seems like it just averages out the overall line thickness, and it's adding a thin line between the color separation and with the ghost type element here. I don't know how to say this word, so I'm not going to say it. This kind of looks like the convolve that we played with earlier, only it's got no color in the edge here. So if we go back to convolve, there's some color variation, and then if we go back down to whatever this term is, there it's just black and white. So if you wanted something that was similar to this but without the color, you can do that easily. You have local orientation, which I thought this was some really interesting results. Morphological filter. Come on, there we go. So this just looks like it does something similar as the, what was it? The isophotes I think we were looking at, where it makes everything the same thickness, but you can see here it has a nice feathered, maybe not feathered, but opacity difference in the line work where these lines end. That actually has a really nice effect to it. So we could probably change this to a smaller, let's see, 2. Might be too small. There we go. So it kind of redoes the line work, but adds a little bit of a, I don't want to say texture, but just some variation in how that looks. I like that. It looks really neat. Segmentation. So I'm not too sure. Oh, I see. It's taking all the lines out except where the color or the shape might be different. So it's kind of separating that part. So this is fine because the color is separating the shape and the form, but right here, it's keeping the black, and with her chin here, her arm, it's keeping some separation. That has a really neat effect. I wish I could zoom out on this one. That'd be really cool to see all together. Not perfect in the preview, but that's okay. Skeleton was very interesting, to say the least, when I was going through this. It looks like a spider web to me. I'm not too sure why it's called skeleton when it looks like a spider web. But you can make a spider web. So let's see, let's increase the smoothness. Whoa, that's actually really neat. So if you wanted to make some really cool Halloween art and you need some ideas of where to start, I mean, you could start here. I mean, the smoothness obviously is not what you want. Or if you're doing like speed lines, I don't know. Let's see. Oh, it's previewing. Oh, look at that. So you can change the preview type. So if you want to see, let's do checkered. That's interesting. So the before and the after. That's really cool. All right, we'll just do full. So yeah, I definitely recommend playing with that. That's pretty cool. Let's do thinning. All right, this is one of those that will take a while to process. I think my only complaint about anything with the gimmick is if it's a heavier filter, I kind of would personally appreciate, like, hey, this might be a heavier filter that your computer might use some more processing power for. Yeah, it's not gonna. We'll just leave it alone then. Like, yes, the slow and the fast it kind of implies that, but like, hey, this, I guess maybe if I could go and change the color of the preview or the text here, just so I can make a note, hey, this is going to be a heavier filter. That way I can plan ahead with whatever it is I'm doing. Super Pixels was another one that was taking a while to process, so we're gonna let that sit until it's done. There we go. So at first I thought this was gonna pixelize everything, but it just made everything into like tiles or like a mosaic, which is still totally fine. You can see here, it's not like keeping everything equal sized really, which is pretty neat, but you can change the overall size here and everything else. Again, this was a heavier filter, so I'm just gonna change one thing. We're gonna change the regularity and then we'll let it sit and hopefully not sit for like forever. All right, so raising the regularity gave some more color definition to these little mosaic tiles, but it also removed the line work, which is totally fine. I liked that it brought the shadows in more where I had the lines. Thought that was pretty neat. I'm gonna carefully move this over, see how it does with the color over here. All right, so it actually keeps the blended in here. It just kind of separates it out with the mosaic tiles. I do like how this looks with this darker edge. It has a very neat mosaic feel to it. And then thin edges. I mean, it's thin edges, like it's not like anything super crazy. You can see that it does kind of outline the lines itself. So instead of a single line, it creates a shape from the line art. All right, so let's move on to deformations. So deformations kind of, I mean, it's basically what you expect. There's a ton of options. We won't be going through all of them just because there's so many, but I'll go over a couple that I thought were neat, and that'll be that. So if we go to breaks, it's like broken glass. You can see it gives a shatter effect to the artwork, which I thought was really cool. You can do a flat one, you can do a relief. So it's got like some ripple effect in there. We have crease. So this looks like the ripple effect in Photoshop. I think that's what it's called, or something like that. Some sort of, or liquify, or whatever that is. It has a really neat effect there. Looks like she has double eyes here. The water droplets I thought was really neat. So as a note here, if you don't have a white background and it's transparent, this will look more black. But using a white background, it looks more like water droplets. So I thought this was cool. And you can change the size, the shadow, the variability, which so like how the shapes and stuff like that. So it's going to vary it a little bit more. So the less I do, it's just gonna be very smooth, and the highest gives me some more variation there. Change the radius, we can make them smaller. We can make them large. We can make it less dense, and we can make it denser. Actually, let's make a smaller radius for that. There we go. We can change the refraction, so how the light hits the water droplets, which is pretty neat. The angle of the light, so what direction it's coming from. So the specular size, so you know, the shininess and all that. All this good stuff that you can play with. And I just thought that was neat. So fisheye, I mean, if you know what fisheye is, it warps it into a spherical shape. This is not the most flattering effect for this particular image, but I thought it was cool if you wanted to give your artwork a fisheye look, or maybe your photograph or something, or just to see what it would do. I think that would be fun. We have kaleidoscope options. So a kaleidoscope, I mean, it repeats it in a specific pattern. So here, this is pretty neat. Nothing I would use for a artwork of the figures I draw, but if you have like some color schemes, if we go back to colors actually, and we go to, what was it? We go to color blobs, we could mix a bunch of colors in here, and then we could apply the kaleidoscope option afterwards. So I would apply this, get some cool colors going, and then, where is it? I could pick one of these kaleidoscope options and get some really interesting patterns out of it. You can use those as backgrounds just for fun, who knows. So a panorama is going to be like a very long shot. That would be like a 360. You could use this in an HDRI image. Obviously this is not the right image to do that with because it looks a little goofy. That's okay. You can do perspective. So we can change how this is going to look by using this little dot here and moving it, which I thought was pretty neat. So if you had, oh geez, I don't know, maybe you had like a sketch of a city, you could go ahead and give it some perspective and then use one of the assistant tools to start building it just from that 2D sketch. And I think that'd be really cool. And you have some other things here. We have more raindrops. We had the ripple, kind of like in Photoshop. Sphere, it's pretty cool. Sphere eyes, kind of similar to the fisheye, but it's just kind of taking the whole thing as if it were on a sphere and affecting it that way. And then we have wave, water, twirl, zoom. Oh, it's zooming into your image, okay. Let's see. There we go. Very interesting filter, but okay. So that's pretty much it for the contours and deformations. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Lots of different ways you can use it. I think deformations would be fun for more solid color and abstract type things you may want to do for patterns and stuff like that. Where contour, you know, you might want to add some oomph to your line art, or for the skeleton, make some weird spiderweb things. And that is pretty much it for the contours and deformations. Like I said, I haven't gone over everything for deformations, but or deformations, but I definitely would go through and play with them. And as with anything, some of these do take a little while to process completely for your image, and how big your file size can sometimes affect that too. So if there's a lot going on in that image, definitely expect it to take a little bit of time. And that's it. Next video, we'll be going over degradations and details. So if you want to go ahead and play with them ahead of time, you can. There's a lot for each one, so I won't be going over everything for those two, but hopefully we'll get some interesting stuff out of it. All right, thank you guys for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, let me know down below. I'll do my best to help you out and answer them or approach it into another video. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out the next video in the series, and I will see you in the next one.